The golden light of sunset spilled through the windows of Napa Valley's most exclusive vineyard as Ian Yardley stared into his wine glass, utterly bored with the pretentious chatter surrounding him. He hadn't expected the Hawthorne Estate's annual wine tasting to feel so hollow, especially considering the $20,000 per ticket price tag that kept most people away, but not billionaires like himself, who had made fortunes in renewable energy. "Mr. Yardley, what do you think of the 15 Cabernet?" asked a man whose name Ian had already forgotten. Ian swirled the dark liquid, offering the practiced smile he reserved for business associates and socialites who wanted something from him. "It's bold, perhaps a bit presumptuous." Like this entire evening, he thought, he excused himself and wandered away from the group, gravitating toward the balcony overlooking the vineyards. The rolling hills of grapevines stretched to the horizon, bathed in amber light. This view, at least, was worth the ticket price. "Not what you expected," came a voice from his left. Ian turned to find a woman leaning against the railing, a half-full glass of red wine in her hand. She wasn't dressed like the other guests, no designer dress or diamonds dripping from her ears. Instead, she wore fitted black pants and a simple white blouse, her chestnut hair pulled back in a practical low ponytail. "That obvious?" he asked. "You've checked your watch 4 times in the past hour. Either you're expecting someone or counting the minutes until you can leave." Ian found himself smiling a real smile this time. "I'm Ian Yardley, Jade Keller," she replied, extending her hand. "And before you ask, no, I'm not a guest. I work for Alchemy Wine Tours. We're coordinating some of the logistics tonight." Ian shook her hand, noting the firm grip and the calluses that spoke of actual work rather than the soft, manicured hands he usually encountered at these events. "So you're here for business, not pleasure," Ian observed. "Aren't we all?" she countered, taking a sip of her wine. "Most people here are trying to network with me or pitch investment opportunities," Ian admitted. "But I doubt that's your agenda." Jade laughed, a genuine sound that cut through the affected atmosphere of the event. "I wouldn't know what to pitch you, Mr. Yardley. Though I've heard about your work in renewable energy. Solar Nova, right? My brother installed your panels on his house." Ian was surprised she recognized him. His picture occasionally appeared in business magazines, but he wasn't a celebrity billionaire who courted public attention. "Tell your brother I hope they're working well for him," Ian said, "and please call me Ian." "They are. He hasn't paid an electric bill in 8 months, Jade replied. She glanced at her watch. "I should get back to work. The vertical tasting in the cellar starts in 15 minutes, and I need to make sure the 92 through 97 vintages are breathing properly." Ian watched her walk away, struck by how refreshingly direct she'd been. No flattery, no angling for advantage, just a brief, honest conversation. The vertical tasting proved to be the highlight of the evening, though not because of the wines. Ian found himself continually distracted by Jade as she moved efficiently around the room, ensuring every detail was perfect. She knew the wines intimately, occasionally stepping in to explain a particular vintage's characteristics when the sommelier missed key details. As the event wound down, Ian lingered, watching Jade coordinate with the staff as they cleaned up. He approached her as she was checking items off a clipboard. "The 94 was exceptional," he said. Jade looked up, a hint of surprise in her eyes. "It was. Most people prefer the 95, but the 94 had that hint of blackberry that makes it special." "I wonder," Ian began, uncharacteristically hesitant, "if you might be available to recommend a few bottles for my personal collection? I'm expanding my cellar and clearly you know what you're talking about." Jade considered him for a moment. "I don't usually do private consultations, but Alchemy does offer personalized cellar building services. You can book through our website." Ian felt strangely disappointed by her professional response. "Of course, I'll look into that." Jade must have noticed his reaction because she softened slightly. "What kind of collection are you building?" "Honestly, I'm not entirely sure. I've been buying what other people tell me is valuable, but tonight made me realize I want wines I actually enjoy drinking, not just investment pieces." A genuine smile spread across Jade's face. That's refreshingly honest. Most collectors I meet pretend they understand every nuance. She hesitated, then said, I have a tasting tour tomorrow at Ridgeline Vineyards. They're small but exceptional. If you'd like to join, it might give you some ideas. Ian felt an unexpected thrill at the invitation. What time? 10 a.m. It's a small group, very laid back. I'll be there, Ian promised. The next morning, Ian arrived at Ridgeline Vineyards in casual clothes jeans and a simple button-down rather than his usual tailored suit. The vineyard was unpretentious, a family operation with a small tasting room and spectacular hillside views. Jade was already there with 3 other guests, a middle-aged couple and a young woman who introduced herself as a sommelier from Chicago. Jade's eyes widened slightly when she saw Ian, as if she hadn't really expected him to show up. You made it, she said with a smile that made his chest tighten inexplicably. I wouldn't miss it, Ian replied, suddenly very glad he'd come. The tour was unlike any wine tasting Ian had experienced. Instead of the stuffy, technical approach from the night before, this was sensory and personal. The vineyard owner, Marcus, spoke about his family's 3 generations of winemaking with passion and humor. Jade added insights and questions that brought out the best stories, creating an atmosphere of warmth and authenticity. During a walk through the vineyards, Ian found himself beside Jade as she explained how soil composition affected flavor profiles. You really love this, don't you? He observed. Jade nodded. Wine is alive. It's chemistry and art and history all in one bottle. Every vintage tells a story about the year it was made, the weather, the decisions of the winemaker, the land itself. How did you get into this line of work? Ian asked, genuinely curious. I studied viticulture in college, then worked harvests around the world: France, Argentina, New Zealand. I came back to California 5 years ago to help my parents with their small vineyard when my dad got sick. Your family has a vineyard? Ian was surprised. Nothing fancy. 5 acres in Sonoma. We sell most of our grapes to larger wineries, but we make a few hundred cases under our own label, Keller Vineyards. She smiled self-deprecatingly. You won't find it at fancy tastings. I'd love to try it sometime, Ian said sincerely. The tour concluded with a picnic lunch on a hilltop overlooking the vineyards. As the other guests chatted with Marcus about wine club memberships, Ian helped Jade pack up the picnic supplies. This was incredible, he told her. Thank you for inviting me. You seem like you needed a real wine experience after that stuffy event, Jade replied. I did. Ian hesitated, then asked, Would you have dinner with me tonight? Jade looked up, surprised. Mr. Yardley, Ian, he corrected. Ian, she acknowledged. I don't date clients. I'm not technically your client. I haven't booked any services yet. A smile tugged at the corner of her mouth. That's a technicality. I'm good with technicalities. They've made me billions, Ian replied, returning her smile. Just dinner, at a restaurant of your choosing. Jade studied him for a long moment. All right, but somewhere normal. No private rooms, no $1,000 bottles. I promise. Text me the address and I'll meet you there at 7. They exchanged numbers, and Ian drove back to his hotel feeling lighter than he had in months. That evening, Jade directed him to a small Italian restaurant in downtown Napa, family-owned and filled with locals rather than tourists. Ian arrived to find her already seated at a corner table, wearing a simple blue dress that brought out the warmth in her eyes. This place has the best gnocchi in Napa Valley, Jade said after they'd ordered, and a wine list that won't make the news but will definitely make you happy. They talked easily throughout dinner about wine, about Ian's renewable energy projects, about Jade's travels. She had an encyclopedic knowledge of wine regions around the world but spoke about them without pretension. Ian found himself laughing more than he had in years. So how does a billionaire end up at a wine tasting alone? Jade asked as they shared a tiramisu for dessert. The usual story. All work and no play makes Ian a very wealthy but somewhat solitary man, he replied with a self-deprecating smile. My last serious relationship ended 2 years ago. Caroline wanted more attention than I could give while launching Solar Nova's residential division. That must be difficult, balancing a personal life with building an empire. Ian appreciated that she didn't offer the usual platitudes about finding the right person. It is, and you, are you seeing anyone? Jade shook her head. Not currently. My last relationship ended about a year ago. He wanted me to give up the wine tours and work exclusively on my family's vineyard. And you weren't ready for that? I love our vineyard, but I also love introducing people to new wines, new experiences. The tours let me do that. She took a sip of her espresso. Plus, our vineyard isn't profitable enough yet to be my only focus. My parents sacrificed a lot to keep it going during my dad's illness. As they talked, Ian found himself increasingly drawn to Jade's practical outlook and genuine passion. She wasn't impressed by his wealth or status. When the check came, she insisted on splitting it despite his protests. This isn't a business dinner, she said firmly, just two people getting to know each other. Ian walked her to her car, reluctant for the evening to end. I'd like to see you again, he said. Jade looked up at him, her expression thoughtful. I'd like that too, but I should be upfront. I have a complicated life. The vineyard, my tours, helping my mom. I don't have much room for casual dating. Who said anything about casual? Ian replied softly. Their first kiss was gentle, questioning, both of them testing unfamiliar waters. When they parted, Jade's smile held a hint of surprise, as if she hadn't expected the chemistry between them to be quite so potent. Good night, Ian Yardley, she said, getting into her car. Good night, Jade Keller, he replied, already planning when he would see her again. Over the next 3 weeks, Ian extended his stay in Napa Valley, rescheduling meetings and conducting business remotely. He and Jade saw each other almost daily, their relationship growing with unexpected speed and intensity. She showed him hidden gem wineries that tourists never discovered. He accompanied her on wine tours, learning more from watching her interact with guests and vintners than he had from any book or tasting. On a rare day off, Jade took Ian to her family's vineyard. Keller Vineyards was modest compared to the estates he'd been visiting, but there was an undeniable magic to the place. The vines grew on a gently sloping hillside, with a small winery building and a farmhouse nestled among oak trees. Jade's mother, Margaret, welcomed them warmly, though Ian could see the curiosity in her eyes as her daughter introduced him simply as Ian with no mention of his last name or wealth. Mom, I'm going to show Ian the North Field, Jade said after they'd had coffee on the porch. Take your time, Margaret replied with a knowing smile that made Ian wonder how much Jade had told her about him. As they walked through the vineyard, Jade explained how they were gradually replanting with more drought-resistant rootstock, a costly but necessary investment given California's changing climate. These vines were planted by my grandfather, she said, running her hand along a gnarly old vine. They don't produce as much as the newer plantings, but the grapes have incredible concentration. Ian was struck by the pride in her voice. Your family has built something remarkable here. It's not much compared to what you're used to, it's real, Ian interrupted. That's worth more than any showcase estate. Jade led him to a wooden bench at the edge of the vineyard, overlooking a small valley. This is my favorite spot. My dad used to bring me here when I was little. We'd talk about what the vines were thinking. What are they thinking today? Ian asked, taking her hand. They're thinking it's strange to see me here with a man who builds solar empires instead of wine barrels, she said with a small smile. Is it strange for you too? Jade turned to face him. Sometimes. You live in a world so different from mine, Ian. Your business meetings probably cost more than our entire harvest. That doesn't matter to me, Ian said, but it exists. You can't pretend it doesn't. Ian was quiet for a moment. When I was 12, my father lost his job at the steel mill. For 2 years, we struggled while he tried to find work. I remember the shame in his eyes when he couldn't pay for my school field trips. He looked out over the vineyard. I promised myself I would never feel that helpless. That's why I worked so hard, built what I built. And now? Jade asked softly. Now I have more money than I could spend in 10 lifetimes, but until I met you, I'd forgotten what it felt like to be genuinely excited about waking up in the morning. Their kiss this time was deeper, a recognition of something profound developing between them. When they finally returned to the farmhouse, Margaret took one look at their faces and discreetly made herself scarce, mentioning errands in town. In the simple kitchen of the Keller family home, Jade opened a bottle of their estate Syrah and served it with a wedge of local cheese and fresh bread. They sat at the worn wooden table, talking about their childhoods, their dreams, the parallel paths that had finally intersected. "I should tell you," Ian said as evening approached, "I need to go back to San Francisco tomorrow. I've pushed off too many meetings and my CFO is threatening a mutiny." Jade nodded, though he could see the disappointment in her eyes. "Of course, you have a company to run." "Come with me," Ian said impulsively. "I can't. I have tours scheduled all week." "The weekend, then. Fly up Friday evening. I'll show you my world the way you've shown me yours." Jade hesitated, then nodded. "Okay, Friday." The goodbye that night was more difficult than either had expected. They'd fallen into a routine so quickly, so naturally, that the interruption felt jarring. Ian kissed her at her car, reluctant to let go. "It's just a few days," Jade reminded him with a smile. "Too many," Ian replied. Back in San Francisco, Ian threw himself into work, catching up on the decisions and meetings he'd postponed. His executive team noticed the change in him, a new energy, a brightness that hadn't been there before. "Whatever you found in wine country, you should bottle it," his CFO, Richard, commented after a particularly productive strategy session. Ian smiled but offered no explanation. He wasn't ready to share Jade with his corporate world just yet. Friday couldn't come soon enough. Ian sent his private jet to Napa to bring Jade to San Francisco, despite her protestations that a commercial flight would be fine. When she arrived at his penthouse overlooking the bay, her expression as she took in the panoramic views told him she was finally understanding the scale of his wealth. "This is something else," she said, setting down her weekend bag. Ian watched her carefully. "Too much," Jade turned to him with a smile. "Just different, very different from my mom's farmhouse." "Different can be good," Ian said, pulling her into his arms. That weekend, Ian showed Jade his San Francisco, not just the upscale restaurants and exclusive clubs, but the small bookshop in North Beach, where he found engineering texts as a college student. The diner where he'd eaten during his startup days when every dollar counted. The park bench where he'd sat after his first big investment round, terrified and exhilarated. On Saturday night, he took her to a charity gala at the Museum of Modern Art. Jade wore a simple black dress that somehow outshone the designer gowns around them. Ian introduced her to business associates and friends, proudly watching as she charmed them with her knowledge of wine and her genuine interest in their conversations. "Your girlfriend is delightful," whispered Monica Hayes, a venture capitalist who'd backed Ian's first company. "And refreshingly real. Where did you find her?" "At a wine tasting," Ian replied, his eyes following Jade as she conversed with a renowned climate scientist. "Though I think she found me." Later that night, as they lay in Ian's bed overlooking the city lights, Jade traced patterns on his chest. "I met at least 5 women tonight who were trying to figure out if I'm a serious threat to their plans for you." Ian laughed. "The San Francisco social scene has been trying to marry me off for years. I can see why. Eligible billionaire bachelor with his own jet and a nice smile." "Is that all I am to you? A nice smile and a jet?" Ian teased. Jade propped herself up on one elbow, her expression serious. "No, you're the man who listens when I talk about soil composition, who asks questions about my family's vineyard like it's as important as your solar company. Who looks at me like I'm the most interesting person in the room, even when I'm just talking about grape harvests." Ian pulled her closer. "Because you are the most interesting person in any room." Sunday came too quickly, and soon it was time for Jade to return to Napa. As they stood on the private airfield, the reality of their different worlds felt more pronounced. "When will I see you again?" Ian asked. "I don't know," Jade admitted. "Harvest is starting next week. I'll be helping at my family's vineyard every spare moment I have." Ian took her hands. "I've been thinking, what if I invest in Keller Vineyards, help you expand, modernize?" "No," Jade interrupted firmly, pulling her hands away. "That's not why I'm with you, Ian. I know that, but I want to help. My family has kept that vineyard going through droughts, recessions, and my father's illness. We don't need a billionaire's rescue." Ian stepped back, stung by her words. That's not what I meant, isn't it? You see a problem, and your instinct is to throw money at it. That's your world, Ian, not mine. They stared at each other, the distance between them suddenly more than physical. I should go, Jade finally said, her voice softer. Thank you for this weekend. Ian watched her board his jet, feeling as though something precious was slipping through his fingers. The next 2 weeks were difficult. They spoke on the phone, but their conversations felt strained. Jade was exhausted from the harvest, working 16-hour days alongside her mother and their small crew. Ian was busy with a major expansion of Solar Nova's European operations, his days filled with meetings and his nights with financial projections. I miss you, he told her late one night, calling despite the late hour. I miss you too, Jade replied, her voice tired but warm. The harvest is going well, though. The Syrah is showing great potential this year. That's great, Ian said, wishing he could see her face. Listen, I've been thinking about what you said about me throwing money at problems. You're right, that's my default, but it's because that's what I have to offer. Money, resources. Ian, no, let me finish. What I should have said is that I believe in what your family is building. I believe in you, and I want to be part of it, not because it needs fixing, but because it matters to you. There was silence on the line, and for a moment, Ian thought they'd been disconnected. Thank you for understanding, Jade finally said. And for what it's worth, you have a lot more to offer than just your money. After they hung up, Ian couldn't sleep. He kept thinking about Jade's words, about the gap between their worlds and how to bridge it. By morning, he had a plan. 3 days later, Ian arrived at Keller Vineyards unannounced, dressed in work clothes and carrying coffee and pastries from the bakery in town. Jade was in the field, supervising a team of workers harvesting Cabernet grapes. She froze when she saw him, then broke into a smile that made the early morning drive worth every minute. What are you doing here? She asked as he approached. I heard you need an extra pair of hands for the harvest, Ian replied. I'm volunteering. Jade looked skeptical. Have you ever harvested grapes before? No, but I'm a quick learner. Jade studied him for a moment, then handed him a pair of pruning shears. These vines won't harvest themselves, Mr. Billionaire. Let's see what you've got. The work was harder than Ian had anticipated. By noon, his back ached, his hands were stained purple, and he had developed a profound respect for the labor that went into each bottle of wine. But there was also a satisfaction in the work, in seeing the bins fill with perfect clusters of grapes that would eventually become Keller Vineyards Cabernet. During a lunch break, Jade found him sitting under an oak tree, flexing his sore fingers. You're doing better than I expected, she admitted, sitting beside him. Is that a compliment? Ian asked with a smile, an observation. Jade handed him a water bottle. Why are you really here, Ian? Ian took a drink, considering his answer, because I realized something. You know my world now, the galas, the penthouse, the corporate meetings, but I only know pieces of yours. If we're going to bridge the gap between us, I need to understand where you come from, what matters to you. Jade's expression softened. And manual labor in a vineyard seemed like the way to do that. It seemed like a start, Ian said honestly. Plus, I missed you. Jade leaned in and kissed him, not caring that the harvest crew was watching. I missed you too. Ian stayed for the remainder of the harvest week, working alongside Jade and her mother, learning every aspect of the process. In the evenings, exhausted but satisfied, they would sit on the porch of the farmhouse, drinking last year's wine and talking about the future. On his last night at Keller Vineyards, Ian and Jade walked to her favorite bench overlooking the valley. The harvest was complete, the grapes safely fermenting in tanks and barrels. A nearly full moon illuminated the now empty vines. I've been thinking, Ian said as they sat together, her head on his shoulder. That sounds dangerous, Jade teased. Solar Nova has offices worldwide, but I can run most operations remotely. I've already started looking at properties in Napa. Jade sat up, surprised. You're moving to Napa Valley. I'm considering it, if there's a reason for me to be here. Ian took her hand. Is there a reason, Jade? She looked at him for a long moment. What about your life in San Francisco, your company? My company will continue to thrive. As for my life. Ian smiled. I've discovered recently that my life is more fulfilling when you're in it, whether that's in San Francisco, Napa, or anywhere else. That's a big change to make for someone you've known just a few months. Sometimes you just know, Ian said simply. I've made billion-dollar decisions on less certainty than I feel about us. Jade was quiet, looking out over the vineyard her family had tended for generations. I won't leave this place, she finally said. It's part of me. I'm not asking you to. And I won't be a trophy wife at galas and corporate events. I would never want you to be anything but yourself, Ian assured her. The woman who knows more about wine than anyone I've ever met, who works harder than any of my executives, who sees me, not my bank account. Jade turned to face him fully. Are you sure about this? Really sure? Because my world is a lot less glamorous than yours. I've never been more sure of anything, Ian replied. These past months have shown me what's been missing in my life, not more success or more acquisitions, just this. Realness, purpose beyond profit, love. Love, Jade repeated softly. Yes, love, Ian confirmed. I love you, Jade Keller, your knowledge, your passion, your commitment to this land and your family, everything about you. Jade's eyes glistened in the moonlight. I love you too. Even if you are terrible at pruning vines. They laughed together, the sound carrying across the silent vineyard. Then Ian reached into his pocket and pulled out a small box. I'm not asking you to be a trophy wife, he said. I'm asking you to be my partner in everything. He opened the box to reveal a ring with a single perfect diamond nestled in a band of twisted gold that resembled a grapevine. Jade's breath caught. Ian. I had it made specially. The gold is from your grandfather's wedding band that your mother gave me permission to use. The diamond is ethically sourced. You asked my mother, Jade whispered, touching the ring with trembling fingers. Of course, she also gave me her blessing, by the way. Jade looked from the ring to Ian, her eyes filled with emotion. Yes, she said simply. Yes, I will marry you. As he slipped the ring onto her finger, Ian knew he had found something more valuable than all his business success, a true partner who challenged him, inspired him, and loved him for who he was, not what he owned. 6 months later, they were married under the oak trees at Keller Vineyards, with both their worlds in attendance, Ian's corporate team alongside Jade's wine tour colleagues, Silicon Valley investors next to local vintners. They served Keller Vineyards wines exclusively, including a special blend they had created together during that fateful harvest. For their honeymoon, they traveled to wine regions around the world, from Bordeaux to Barossa Valley, combining pleasure with research for both Keller Vineyards and a new joint venture. A sustainable winemaking initiative powered by solar nova technology that would help small family vineyards reduce costs and environmental impact. Ian did buy a property in Napa Valley, not a showplace mansion, but a charming farmhouse on a hill overlooking both Keller Vineyards and the valley beyond. From his home office, he ran Solar Nova while watching the seasonal changes in the vineyards below. Jade continued her wine tours and worked with her mother on expanding their family business, now with additional resources, but still maintaining the hands-on approach that had made their wines special. On their first anniversary, they opened a bottle from the harvest they had worked together. Sitting on their porch as the sun set over the valley, Ian raised his glass to Jade. To the best pairing I've ever found, he said. Jade smiled, touching her glass to his. Better than the '94 Cabernet, much better, Ian confirmed. Some vintages are good for a special occasion. But you and me, we're an everyday wine, the kind that makes ordinary moments extraordinary. As they sipped their wine, Ian reflected on how a chance meeting at a stuffy wine tasting had changed everything. He had gone to Napa Valley looking for nothing more than a brief escape from his demanding life, and had found instead the perfect pairing, a woman whose strength, passion, and authenticity complemented his ambition and resources in ways he could never have imagined. In the vineyard below, the vines were budding with the promise of another season, another vintage, another year of the life they were building together, a life richer and more complex than any wine could ever be.